Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with something I know you guys are going to be truly excited for. This is from one of my all-time favorites, Mr. David Thompson. This is the next in the Valiant Defense series. This is I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Lanzerath Ridge. All right. This is about the battle on December 16th, 1944's first day of the Battle of the Bulge, when these men were stationed along the ridge and they ended up being in the way of the German advance. They ended up holding out, the 6th Panzer Division and the 1st SS Panzer Army, whatever it was, specific group that was attacking. Basically, the spearhead was coming in, and these handful of men stood in the way and held their ground for an entire day. Now, unfortunately, they ended up being captured at the end of it, but you get to fight and recreate this and hope to stop the German advance. That's what you're doing here. I always love the Valiant Defense series. He does them in such an interesting, unique way. But if you've played a Valiant Defense series game before, you're going to be able to look at this game and understand the core concepts of it without even reading the rulebook. You should be able to just kind of look and get the general gist and go on from there. But there are some unique aspects to this game that make it unique and might actually be pushing it to my favorite of the Valiant Defense series. And I know that's a key thing for me to be saying, but I like this concept. I like the way it's set out. I like the game plan. And all of them operate in a very states of siege manner where you've got a handful of troops, whatever troops they are, holding off just overwhelming odds. And that's what these guys were doing. It was 18 troops and like 4 forward observers who were holding off almost 600 German advancing troops, including Fallschirmjäger. So that is just hardcore for these guys to stand their ground for an entire day against those overwhelming odds. All right, so right now I've got the camera pulled back so you can see the majority of it, just a little bit of the edges of the maps you guys can't see. When we start getting into the examples of gameplay, I will zoom in the map so you guys can see that a little bit better. Do keep in mind, like I always say when I'm showing you guys these, this is a prototype copy, so it's not the finalized version, but it's really close to what you can expect. But you're going to have, professional production versions of all the tokens and paper parts and stuff like that. Your counters aren't going to be the laser cut ones that leave the little ash marks on me. But I gotta say, I still love that burnt wood smell because it shows me that it's new and it's unique and nobody's seen it before, and I get to play with it, and I'm so freaking excited about it. I love it, man. I love that smell. It's that smell of new. I love new. Okay, so if you have played a Valiant Defense series game before, Pavlov's House, Castle Eider, any of the others, you'll know that the general gist usually is trying to prevent the enemy, which is usually Germans, from getting to an area. Okay, whether they're getting to your house or getting into your castle, or in this case, getting into your ridge. So these boxes that you see up here across the top, these are your defense zones, all these big squares from one side to the other. The enemy areas are these small circles down here, and the small squares that you see located around, those are for machine gun emplacements. So if an enemy ever gets into one of these areas and the turn ends with an enemy troop actually up there, then that's going to be game over. You definitely don't want to let that happen at all costs. Now, I can't touch on components, which I usually, start with because it is the prototype copy, but I can say from what I've seen so far that I like it. I'm not expecting anything bad. All the previous components in the previous games have all been good. Pre-rounded counters, nice and thick, nice maps, all that good stuff. So there, you can go based off history that you're going to have good quality stuff to go with. But I do like how they've changed a few things when it comes to the counters. Now, in a lot of the previous games, your defense and your offense tended to be just a a number or dependent on your location. Let's see, what was the soldiers and postmen's uniforms? They had their weapons in the different spots, different rooms throughout the building that they were in. The values on them, they were different, but they were all mainly rolling like D6s. He's changed that up here, and he's done it in a way that I really, really, really like. So let me find a good starting example here. Let me find one of the weaker guys. Okay, right up here. As an example, we'll bring this counter in to show you guys. You got the person's name. This is Webbin. He's part of C Company. That 2 is his Valor number. Basically, have to beat that number to injure him, so that's not good. If they have any special abilities, that will be designated by that letter there to the right. He's got an A, so he can do assists, but there in the bottom right corner, see where it says D6? That's his damage. That's him trying to put out hurt onto someone else. Good stuff. All right, he's got a D6, but this fella right here, Mr. Fancher, is a D8. All right, good stuff. And let's see, I know I've got a D10 around here somewhere. All right, one of our commander guys here, you can tell he's a commander because he's got the C and he has an R, so he can operate the radio, which we'll touch on later. He's got a 2d6, so he gets to roll 2 dice. But then if we look at some of our counters here, our emplaced weapon, that's a D10. And then, of course, your Maul Deuce over there, the 50 cal, is a D12. This is the first time he is including multiple different types of dice and basically using those dice to determine the strength of the weapon, the strength of the attack that's coming in. So we've got all the way from D6 up to D12, D12 being the better one. Obviously, you want to roll higher to do more damage. Yeah, so that really changes it up a little bit. And what you have to roll to damage the enemy is now dependent based on their location, which has happened before, but this is a more of a range-based thing, which I really do like. So if we zoom in, and actually I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. We'll focus here on a single track as we get into our examples. If we're looking at our track here going into this defensive zone, you see how there are numbers laid out. So it's 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're all numbered along through here. These numbers represent the roll that you have to make to damage a person from there. But if you see, some of these are different colors and symbols. Again, that is just like he's done in previous games, where your position will determine what your fields of fire are. So you can only hit areas that are the same color and shape as you. These are the brown squares. They can hit anywhere that has a brown square, all right, laid out. If it's a purple one, like way up over here in the corner, it can only hit where that purple hex is. And the same with the blue off to the far right, orange off to the far left. You can only hit what you have colors to. And some of them have dual spaces. So it's a spot that can hit orange or brown, or it can hit blue and brown over here. But you have to roll equal to or higher than that defensive number to take out the enemy counter. So just looking as an example here, our guy, we're conducting an attack, our little Fancher, I'm going to keep messing that up. He's got a D8, right? Let's say he's attacking down here as his action. He would have to roll with his D8 equal to or greater than 5, since that's the little number right there, to take out this guy. So the farther back they are, the harder they are to hit, obviously. But if we see there are some spots on the board where there's this line and it says +1 on it as we're going along. There's a couple of these on the board, and if your line of sight ever crosses that, it adds a +1 to the defensive position. Okay, so if someone's over here firing over in this direction, their line of sight's going to cross this line, and that's going to give these attackers a +1 to their defense. So they're going to be just a little bit harder. This is basically a range bonus. And what it is, I mean, he can't accurately depict exactly how the ridge is. So these lines help kind of simulate how far apart some of these defensive positions were across the map. So I'm already really liking that. We've got different values for our defenders. We've got for their defense, their valor rating has to be equal to or greater. So some of these guys, they have a 6 valor rating and the enemy attacks with a D6. They're going to be hard to be taken out. But when they're taken out, that's a problem, especially since a lot of those guys are your commanders. And those guys are very, very, very key in this game. We'll touch on that here a little bit more when I finish explaining out the map. Also, as we're looking at it, we see some of these positions that have the little barbed wire looking tokens sitting on them. These are considered fences. These can slow down enemy assaults as they're coming in. If they're coming in and 3 assault counters, which are these little black circle counters, ever get adjacent to one of the fence is going to go down if they have to push through past that point, and they'll start moving in towards the defensive area. Also, if we have, let me grab one of the counters, ever have a leader on one of the lines. So you don't necessarily have to have 3 guys adjacent to it if there's a leader in the line. If they've been deployed, they can go ahead and cut the fence. I guess they need someone to tell them, cut the fence, or enough guys that they pile up against it and end up just pouring through it. Also, looking at the map, we have some little grenade counters here. These represent booby traps that were placed along the base of the ridge here. They'll take out the top assault counter that moves into that space. So whenever they go to cross that, it'll be taken out. There can be more than one assault counter in a single space. So like I was saying, if there is more than one, you'll just take out the top one in the space. All right, couple more things going on the map, and then we'll walk through some of the cards and let you guys see a kind of a round of how the game's going to be played. Notice here up at the top, we've got a few tracks to keep track of. Right here, we've got our morale and our intelligence track. Morale, obviously, just like any other Valiant defense game, if you lose all your morale, you lose the game. You lose morale from losing troops. And you lose morale also now if you have troops that are disrupted. So if your turn ends and your troops are disrupted, that causes your morale to go down 1 point for each troop that is disrupted. So you really got to keep your guys in good order in this game as you're going along. And this is a good time to address what I was talking about earlier as well. Actually, let me grab my commander here for an example. Just like we've seen before with our little counters, right? When they take an action, they're going to go to their exhausted side. All right. That's normal. So this guy does something. He goes to exhausted. We've marked him with one of our little action counters during his turn. Well, your commanders can cause those guys to recover because you can do a recover action. Now, in previous games, you could do a recover action just to cause the guy to go back from exhausted into his ready state to be good to go. You can't do that in this game. All right. The only way to perform a recover action is either through a command, right? So a commander doing it. Now, commander doing that is great because in his space or any adjacent spaces, he can cause up to 3 troops to recover from their exhaustion or disruption. So great, but that causes him to be exhausted, and you can't spend an action to cause him to come back. So you really are on a ticking clock in this game. You only have so many actions when it comes to burning through your decks, which we're going to look at the decks here in just a sec. Now, they are a little bit smaller, and I did question David about this because I wanted to be sure that we were on point. And yes, that has been play tested out, and that's perfect for the difficulty. And you should be hitting the end of a deck where you've used pretty much the majority of your troops. So now when you're making your decisions, you have to be Johnny on the spot. You have to make sure you are making the right decision at the right time with those actions, because no matter what, they're limited. You will only get a max amount of actions no matter how many, guys you bring back, because you start losing these guys when the commanders and the guys that have assist have used those to cause others to recover. Well, that burns those guys out, and you can't keep doing that. So eventually, no matter what, most of your troops will be exhausted, but you should be burned down to the end of the round of the deck by that point. Besides our troops, we do have 3 vehicles up here. radio, artillery, and the Deuce Jeep with a machine gun. Jeep with a machine gun, pretty easy to understand. Machine gun, Deuce puts out, or 50 cal, puts out a hell of a lot of rounds, big rounds, tear the opponent up. That's what that one does. Good stuff. The artillery can take out enemy troops. Now, the neat way that the artillery takes out troops is when you, and actually let me go ahead and address both of these at the same time. The radio and the artillery both require to have these little radio tokens be put on them by troops being there that have the R designation. So it has to be a radio operator of some type. There are some that are specific for radio artillery, some that are radio intelligence, and some that are just radio that can operate either one of them. And you need to use minor actions to gain these little radio tokens and the major action to use it. You'll roll a die. You roll a die for however many of those tokens that you have accrued in that spot. And if you get a 5 or a 6, you get to do whatever it is you're trying to do. If it's the artillery, that actually removes cards from the deck, right? So the enemy deck, the artillery will take the top 3 cards off the deck. That is crucial. That stops adding enemies to the troops, stops adding machine guns, stops moving them. The faster you can burn through this deck, the absolute best. You really want to burn these decks down quick, especially like I was talking about, the fact that you do not have unlimited actions. Your guys are going to get exhausted and burned down. And when it comes to your radio intelligence, by getting successes there, you get to move up on your intelligence track. All right, I'll zoom in up here a little bit so you guys can see these tracks that I'm talking about, or at least one of them that I'm referencing. You guys got to forgive me, I'm a little choked up this evening. These have to do with the emplaced weapons that are around the board, all right? So the 1919, the 1918, the Deuce, I think that's it. There's 4 of them total around the board. They have different amounts of ammo counters that are loaded and then spare ammunition that you have available to use. Now, the key thing about these guys is, just like I was talking about earlier, that you have limited actions, so you want to use them wisely. The good thing about those machine guns is you can basically keep shooting until you're out of loaded ammo, right? You can roll a die for each one of the loaded ammos in there that you want to spend. So you see here with like this 1918, that very bottom right down there says a D10. So you're getting to roll a D10 for each ammo counter you spend. So you might spend that attacking a stack of assault counters that's gotten pretty close. So you're going to try to blast them away. But the key thing is you've only got so much ammunition that you have to spend. You can reload later on in between fights and doing reload actions, and you can transfer some ammo between the positions by using your troops to move it around. You can move your guns around as well, so you do have options. You don't have to keep them where they are at the start of the scenario. Now, there is one that I went ahead and put onto the board. It's not that one, it's this one way over here to the right. These guys are part of a variant to the game, and that's their little spot up here at the top of the board. So in a normal game, they're not going to be included. They're a what if type scenario if things have been done differently that day. And if you want an easier game, you go ahead and include those guys on the board and their weapon with its ammo. Gives you a little bit of extra firepower on the board to slow down the incoming troops. Really love that aspect of it. It's like, hey, you've got these really cool, really big weapons, but you've only got so much ammo. Just like in real life, you got to choose who you're going to shoot at. Are you going to save it for later? You know, when are you going to burn through it? Or have the enemy, you know, encroached really close, and now it's just time to hold down the trigger and melt the barrel and hope for the best. All right, so that's the basics of the map. And by the way, I forgot to mention, the only ones who can use machine guns have a little M designator. Basically, if it's anything special, like inspiration, doing an assist, doing a command, the things that you have seen before in different Valiant defense series, those type special actions, it will be on the counter. All right, so if they don't have it, they can't do the special action, whether it's radio, machine gun, anything. The only one I don't kind of agree with is the machine gun. I can understand it to maybe an extent, but most guys in the military could fuddle their way through a machine gun. Now, if you haven't been trained on a heavy piece of equipment, it could throw you for a little bit, but I guarantee you, if someone's shooting at you, you're going to learn quickly how to load that thing and hold the damn trigger down. Okay, so let's zoom in here for an example, and we'll zoom in on a couple of defensive positions and a track, and we'll kind of talk about how the game's played, all right? What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through a deck of cards. But if you notice, this deck of cards says attackers 1. That's because there is 4 decks. 4 decks! That's a pretty good sized deck right there. That's a lot of cards to get through. That's why I was questioning Mr. David Thompson, going, "Hey, are you sure you can't, get those guys to unexhaust any other way?" But he assured me it's been play tested the hell out of. So we've got our deck. Each round, each turn, we're going to draw 3 cards off the top of this deck, and that's going to be the enemy phase. They're going to play their 3 cards, and then we are going to get 5 actions. Right? That's what these little tokens are for. You get 5 of them. You place them on your troops as you do whatever it is. Those actions can be any number of things, between firing your machine guns, just performing your regular attacks, doing radio, moving, transferring weapons, any of that type stuff. There's a multitude of different actions that you can take. So let's look at some of these cards and see what the enemy is going to be doing. So we draw, I think the top 5 should be an example. Now, I drew the top 5 to show you guys all the different types that we can have. Now, there are more and different cards in the later decks. I'll show you guys those later on, but these are the basic cards that you can plan to encounter during the game. All right, so assault counters are easy to understand. They place troops onto the board. All right, so looking at the card, you can see that it shows the counter. Like this, for example, is a leader, and it shows you what lane to put them in. They're going to be in one of the different lanes. This one would be in the first lane for the brown squares. So that would actually be, can I get this on camera? Yep, this one right here. Shows a 1 right there at the top. So he would actually be in this lane, and you would push him on along. But you noticed it veers off here, all right? So it goes 1 this way, 2 this way. So if you have one that says 1, you're going to place them back here at the back, and they'll move on along. But let's say this little fence token wasn't there, the troops were moving through. If you're placing one that's in the 1, they're going to move in this direction. If you're placing one that's at the 2, then they're going to move in this direction. Basically, the troops will go in whatever direction that the card says for them to go. Really easy to understand. It kind of confused me at first when I was looking at it. I was like, wait, some of these are combined, like 2 and 1 go to this, and 3 and 4 come over here, and 5 and 6 and this over here. Basically, whatever lane it says, whatever number you're going to, you push the enemy counters as far as they can go in that direction. And so we've got leaders. We have the grenadiers, which you see are a little more dangerous. We got a little 3 there, just like the leader. You see it says roll in place, though. For most of the assault troops, you're going to roll, and you'll place them at 1 through 6. Just roll a d6, place a counter down. We've also got our submachine gun troops. They're 2 instead of 3, so they would roll 2 dice when they make attacks up at the defensive place. They're not going to do attacks down here. They do that when they get up here, but we'll show that in a sec. And then the basic are the riflemen, which you do start off with a few select riflemen already on the board, ready to go. All right, so that's our assault counters, different ones that can be there. And then we've also got this, the MG42. So let's say, as an example, we got this one. It says, place or activate A. Well, A is right here. So since there is no MG42 there, oops, I grabbed the wrong one. Had to grab the right one. If you see at the bottom right, there is the letter designating the correct position. So this is A, This card is for A, so we would place this specific counter and it would simply be placed down. That's it. However, if it was already placed, then you activate. This is a little different than his previous games. Usually when you had weapons like this, it would be placed and activated, but this is or activate. So place, and then when this card is drawn again, then you're going to activate it. Here we would roll a d6 to determine whether it attacks position 1 or position 2. And if, let's say it attacked position 2, it has a single die. That's what the 1 is there. So we have 2 defenders at position 2. We would roll a d6 once for each one of these guys and compare it to their valor number. If it was equal to or greater than their valor number, then they would become disrupted. So if we look at them, Mr. Fort here has a valor number of 3. So if we got a 3, 4, 5, or 6, then he's going to be disrupted, and you would place one of these counters on him. Remember though, I was talking about it, you want to keep those disruptions to a minimum as much as possible, because that can cause your morale track to go down very quickly. If both of these guys were to be disrupted by that machine gun attack and the turn ended and they were still disrupted, that's 2 points of morale we've lost. All right, and just to let you guys see some of the cards coming on the board, let's say we drew these 3 assault cards. We'll just roll through them one at a time here. Let me grab myself a d6. For the first one, we've got a rifleman coming on the board. All right, he's going towards position 4. Position 4 is here. So he's going to go onto this track. So we grab ourselves a rifleman, place him at the back of the track. There's already someone there. So everyone moves up 1 space and we get to place him down. They don't start stacking until they get up against a fence. All right, that's all we got to do for our first one. He's done. Boom. We do our second one. Roll for our machine gunner. He also gets a 4. Bad roll, Gimpy, bad roll. All right, let's grab ourselves a machine gunner. Actually, this is a good example. So we place him at the back of this track, causes everyone to move up a space. And now you see we've got 2 riflemen sitting here up against the fence. That takes care of this card. Then we do our last card. Boom, we got a 3. Well, 3 is there, all right? Unfortunately for us, that will cause, let me grab myself a grenadier counter here. He's going on the same track, right? So 3 and 4 are both on this track. 3 goes off this way, 4 goes off this way, but they don't deviate until they get to that fence. All right, so we continue on. We've already got 2 riflemen there. This one moves up, he stacks on. Submachine machine gun goes there. The grenadier goes here at the back of the track and they're pushing on. And I know you're going, well, Gimpy, there's 3 there. Yes, there are 3 there, but they do not push through until there are 3 there already. So it doesn't break as soon as there's 3. The next time we would go to place a counter on this track as they're moving through, doesn't matter if they're going to 3 or 4, it would cause the fence to break and they would move through into whatever direction that they were headed. And just to continue showing you guys examples, let's say this is where our track is and they got an order to move up into 3. So there's another counter being placed down, moving them up. Well, we have a stack with 2 guys here. This would move forward. It crosses a booby trap. So a single counter makes it. The top one gets taken out by the booby trap and the booby trap gets taken off the board. Now you're going, all right, well, did they just win since they've got a counter there? No, you still have time to take them out because the bad guys go first and then you go with your turn. So you have till the end of your turn to take him out. Now you can't shoot in there to shoot him, take him out that way. The way this works is you can do a close combat action against enemy counters that are there. And for each close combat action that you do, you get to remove a counter. You don't have to roll a die. You don't have to roll for anything. You just automatically take him right off the board. Now remember though, you have to be in that position to take that action to take out the enemy counter. So you might have to move someone in there. You might have to figure something out. But if you don't have enough guys to take it out and there are enemy troops there, that's going to be the end of your game. All right, so that's the basics of the game. And I know you're going, well, Gimpy, that doesn't seem too bad. You know, that deck of cards isn't too much. And you got artillery and radios to be able to take this out. Remember, like I said, this is the first deck. There are 4 decks. So we have deck number 2. This was the first attack, or first deck represents like the early morning when they just did the straight assault. Second deck was like mid-morning, midday. This was like early afternoon with the third deck. And then they finished up their day with the fourth deck. So you got to get through all of these to win the game. All right, so the only thing I haven't shown you guys just yet is the mortar card. This is another enemy card that they have. You can see it rolls just like the MG42 does, but there's no placement. This is just them firing mortars, and this will determine where those mortars hit. These can potentially damage your artillery, your radio, your weapons. If your weapons are dismounted, so on their dark side, they can't be damaged, but if they're emplaced, which gives them a higher damage roll, basically this is D10 versus this being a D8, then they can be damaged. And if your machine guns get damaged, they're out of the game. They're just destroyed. So basically what's going to happen is once you have completed a deck of cards, so you complete deck 1, things get reset. For the most part, you can move your troops around. Some of them do have to go back to certain positions on the board or can't start in other positions. And then you reset the riflemen back to their starting setup. I think it's 10 that are on the board to start the game. Everyone gets flipped back over to their unexhausted side. Again, you still, before you finish ending the turn, you got to check to see if you lose any morale, any of that good stuff as you're going along. But each attack wave gets just that little bit harder as you're going along. So the first one's not going to be too bad. You've got all your troops are fresh. You've got all your ammo. You're set to go, but you're going to be a little bit shorter once you get done with that first deck. And then a little bit shorter when you're done with the second, a little bit shorter when you're done with the third. Historically speaking, they lost during the fourth deck. So if you lose during the fourth deck, it's effectively a draw. You haven't really lost the game. Winning the game completely, obviously, is completing the fourth deck without losing. So without having enemy troops in their positions into your area or going down all the way on the morale track. And I'm getting a little long-winded here, so I'm not going to take and go over every single aspect of the game, but there's still plenty that I have not covered just yet. There are medics that get involved with enemy troops later on, a secret forward observer that you're trying to find. The tactics cards are a whole other variant that can get added into the game, and you guys can see there's a huge bundle of tactics cards which change up the entire flow of the game. And then there are a handful of objective cards as well that can be added to the game. So not only are you trying to do your main objective of holding off the German troops, but you could have other objectives that come into it as well. Things like the disguised forward observer that I was talking about, denying equipment, or making contact. So yeah, I gotta say, I definitely like Lanzerath Ridge. This one is definitely sticking out to me. I just love the concept of no man's land here, and the enemy troops just keep pouring in like a damn Nazi zombie wave, and the guys are just holding out as long as they can, trying to make it through the day. Yeah, pouring out with all their different ammunition, and then especially the tactics of this one, because even in just setting it up, I'm sitting there going, okay, where am I going to move these guys? Because I noticed these two commanders start right here adjacent to each other. I'm like, that's not a good place for them. I should move this commander over here. That way I can use his command action to help recover some of these guys, because there's no recovery guys over there. But then I've got these guys back here that aren't in a position to really do anything. But this guy's a radio artillery. He can go over there to start getting me some artillery to cut down on that enemy deck, while these two assistants can take and pop down into areas where there's gaps where they need to fill in. Like definitely here at 3, there's only one guy. Maybe I move them both over there, or that's what I'm talking about. That's what I've always liked about David Thompson's games, is you just got the just strategy stuff just popping in your head. Like, what am I going to do? What is my best choice to hold off against these overwhelming odds? And one of the neatest aspects I think that he did with the game, and when I was reading over this, he couldn't do it exactly spot on because obviously the game mechanics aren't going to work perfectly. But for the most part, they work for it, that their ratings, all right, so their Valor ratings are based off the awards that they got for this combat action. So if they got the Silver Star, they got a 6, or if they got the Distinguished Cross, they got a 5, or if they got a Bronze Star with a Combat V, they got a 3 as their Valor rating. So like I said, it's a little different. It's not exactly spot on for the guys that were there, but it's relatively close to that to help determine what their Valor ratings were. So yeah, I have to say, after poking around with this game for a little while, that this one has jumped up on my list. If I had to rank the Valiant Defense series, this one is going to probably be tied for first. Yeah, it's definitely up there tying for first. And the big reason I've always liked Castle Itter, because I never say that right, is I like the fact that it was like German and U.S. troops fighting together against the SS troops. It's kind of like it was the end of the war, and everyone realized who the really, really bad guys were. So let's all work together, kill those guys off. You know, I like that aspect, plus the tank being at the front gate, holding off the enemy troops, and everyone trying to hold back the guys as they were trying to pour into the castle. This one has that similar vein, though. 18 men, well, 22 if you include the forward observers. So just depending on historically what was going on, but let's say 20, roughly 20 guys against what, 550, 560 men. I mean, that's beyond unheard of. And they held out for the entire day against overwhelming odds. And the Fallschirmjäger are supposed to be some of the Germans' top crack paratroops, right? And these guys started off thinking it was probably just going to be easy. We're just going to take that ridge. You outnumber them, you know, just run up that hill and go kill them all. There's only a handful up there, and they just lit their asses up and pushed them back. Like, nope, you're not going to take it. You're going to have to, you know, climb this hill or take this hill from our dead, bloody fingers. For me, as a Marine, that mentality always really just hits home, because it was like one of our standing orders in the Corps, that as long as you can still keep pulling the trigger, you keep pulling the trigger. Like if you get an arm blown off, you use the other arm to keep pulling the trigger. If you run out of ammo, you pick up your rifle and you beat them to death with it. You don't give up until like the breath is gone, then the heart stops beating, and then you go to hell and regroup. I don't know. For me, these games just bring back a different time, a different mindset, something that we don't see in today's world anymore, you know. And, you know, men were men, and you take a shot, you get your leg blown off, and you pull it, cinch it together with your belt, and you keep on fighting. And the people today cry because they get the wrong soy milk in their damn lattes. Anyway, that's me getting distracted. Let me stay on point. I'm rambling here a little bit. Yeah, definitely. This one it's popped up on. I think he's hit well with the mechanics. The mechanics are really what's pushing this to the top of the list for me. I love the aspect of the different dice for the different troops. It adds to your choices on where you're putting your guys, especially in between the different waves. Because say you get hit harder on this side, maybe you lose a heavy weapon. Like, okay, well, I need to pull something over there. I've got an extra heavy weapon over here. Maybe I can move it over this direction. A couple of these guys have D8s or D10s. They can hit a little bit harder. I'll move them over there. Maybe put some of the weaker guys here in the middle, you know, whatever. You know, you have to make those hard decisions to try to hold on that extra little bit of time. I really like those mechanics. I think he did well with it. I like the valor points for the troops. You've got some that are almost indestructible with their 5s and 6 ratings, but you got some that'll fall real quick too with a 2. Basically anything besides a 1 is going to take those guys out. So yeah, definitely keep track of it. December 7th, I believe, is the date that they are launching the Kickstarter for this one. Also being released by DVG Games, and you know they have good components, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm not even going to harp on the components. Like I said, all the previous ones have been fine. I don't expect anything less from this one. There's actually more components than you guys have seen here because the prototypes don't have all the finalized components in them. But if you're looking for my personal recommendation as far as the Valiant Defense series goes, this is one you want to add to your list. If you haven't gotten involved with the Valiant Defense series, this is one to start with. By all means, I'm not sure whether or not they're going to have other games in the series available for reprint or not on that Kickstarter. Some, I think, are sold out at this point with the sales that are going on. But if they do, and you don't have any of them yet, this one and Castle Itter, whatever, definitely top 2 on my list. And they're all good, but I like them in different ways. I would probably put those 2, then Pavlov's House, and then Soldiers and Postmen's Uniforms. And that one, I don't know. The story just didn't catch with me as much as these stories did. Maybe it's because they were Polish. Nothing against Polish people. I just don't know as much about their history. So, but yeah, Pavlov's House would probably be my 3rd, and then Soldiers and Postmen's Uniforms, with this and Castle taking the top 2 spots. Absolutely. But if you guys have any questions, by all means, feel free to put it down in the comments below. I will get those answered for you if I don't know. And if I don't know, I will find out from those who do know. All right, that's going to be it for this one. You guys take care. I'll see you in the next one.